She walked out on her husband and newborn twins to chase a rich man's lifestyle. 7 years later, she stood at the gate of his mansion, demanding her family back. But what she didn't know, he'd already rebuilt his life, remarried, and had the receipts to destroy her in court. You won't believe what happened when the past came knocking. David Carter never imagined he'd be raising newborn twins alone. At 33, he was a construction foreman in Austin, Texas, working double shifts just to keep food on the table. His wife, Jessica, had always complained that their life was too small for her, but David thought they were building something real, a family, a future, until the night she walked out. It started like any other Thursday. David came home exhausted, expecting to kiss his daughters goodnight and eat reheated leftovers. Instead, he found an empty house, a shattered dinner plate on the floor, and a crumpled note by the sink. "I can't do this anymore. I deserve more." Jessica had taken her suitcase and left their 2-month-old twins, Lily and Grace, asleep in their cribs. No explanation, no warning, no calls. David panicked at first, called her phone, called her friends, got nothing but silence. Then came the rumors. She'd flown to Miami to be with Logan Hayes, a real estate investor who drove a Maserati and promised her the life she thought she deserved. While Jessica sipped cocktails on balconies, David was heating bottles at 2 a.m., changing diapers with calloused hands, and learning how to braid tiny pigtails from YouTube videos. He never filed a police report, never chased her down. Instead, he focused on surviving, then thriving. With help from an old friend in commercial real estate, David switched careers. He learned fast, worked harder, and within 5 years launched his own development firm. His projects started small, fixer-uppers, duplexes. But word spread about his honesty and work ethic. Within 7 years, Carter Development was valued at over $15 million. The man Jessica abandoned had become a local success story. But it wasn't just business that transformed David. A year after Jessica left, he met Rachel, an elementary school teacher with a calm spirit and a sharp sense of humor. She never tried to replace the girl's mother. She simply showed up every day with patience and love. What started as friendship turned into partnership. They married quietly in a courthouse, no drama, no big announcements, just two people building something solid. By the time Lily and Grace started first grade, they called Rachel Mom without hesitation. Jessica, she was a ghost, until she wasn't. One crisp Saturday morning, as the family sat down for pancakes, the intercom buzzed at the front gate. David answered, expecting a delivery. Instead, a voice he hadn't heard in 7 years crackled through the speaker. "David, it's me, Jessica." Rachel's fork froze midair. The twins glanced up, confused. David didn't respond. He just walked to the window and saw her. Jessica stood outside the wrought iron gate, her posture defiant, her suitcase by her feet. She had finally come back, but not for an apology, not for closure. She was here for something else entirely. Jessica's return wasn't quiet. Within minutes of her arrival at the gate, her shouting echoed down the street. "This is my family, David! My kids! Open the damn gate!" David didn't flinch. Rachel stood beside him, silent but alert, while Lily and Grace played in the living room, unaware of the storm brewing outside. Neighbors peeked out from behind trimmed hedges. Legacy Drive didn't get this kind of drama, especially not from the Carters, the couple everyone respected. David stepped out alone. Jessica's eyes widened when she saw him. Older, sharper, confident. He wasn't the man she left behind. "I'm not here to fight," she said quickly, trying to soften her voice. I want to see my daughters." David didn't move. "You haven't asked about them once in 7 years." Jessica swallowed hard. "I was sick. I had postpartum depression. I left because I was scared I'd hurt them. I left to protect them." The line sounded rehearsed. David nodded slowly, then gestured toward the street. "You need to go. This isn't the place." "I'm not leaving," she snapped. "I'm their mother." "No, Jessica, you gave that up." She lunged forward as the gate opened. "You can't keep them from me." Rachel appeared behind him, calm, unshaken. Jessica's eyes narrowed. "Of course, she's here, playing house with my husband, raising my children." "Ex-husband," David corrected. Jessica's laugh was sharp. We were never officially divorced. I filed 2 years after you left. You didn't respond. It was granted by default. You were served at your last known address. That's not legal. Abandonment is legal grounds for divorce in Texas. Jessica turned to Rachel. You think this is your life? It's not. I'm taking it back. Rachel didn't reply. Jessica stormed off, but the warning was clear. She wasn't finished. 3 days later, David was served court papers at his downtown office. Jessica had hired a high-powered family attorney from Dallas, Marcus Blackwell. Known for aggressive custody tactics and squeezing settlements out of wealthy exes, Blackwell didn't come cheap. His strategy was bold. Overturn the divorce, claim Jessica had been mentally unfit when she left, and demand joint custody, spousal support, and half of David's assets. The lawsuit painted Jessica as a victim, a young mother suffering from untreated postpartum psychosis, abandoned by a negligent husband, and manipulated into leaving by a predatory investor. David's attorney, Sarah Maxwell, wasn't surprised. This is classic, she said after reading the documents. She's not back for the girls. She's back for the money. Maxwell started digging. Jessica's story depended on sympathy. But her past was well documented. Within days, Sarah's investigators uncovered a string of bank accounts opened under Jessica's maiden name days after she left. Travel receipts showed a luxury trail, Miami, Vegas, the Bahamas, all with Logan Hayes. The twins' baby books were still blank. No photos from Jessica, no cards, no calls, no gifts. But the most damning evidence came from a forgotten storage unit David had never cleared out. Inside, tucked in a folder of old mail, was a notarized letter. Jessica's handwriting, signed and dated just a week after she vanished. I, Jessica Carter, voluntarily relinquish all parental rights to Lily and Grace. I do not wish to have contact with them or their father. I am starting a new life. Stamped, witnessed, sealed. That letter, Maxwell said, would end the custody battle before it started, if the court took it seriously. Still, Jessica's team was relentless. She showed up at court in conservative suits, wept during hearings, told stories of missed birthdays, and claimed her recovery had been long and painful. She brought in therapists, support group leaders, even a priest who vouched for her healing journey. Social media told another story. Jessica had multiple profiles under aliases. Posts showed her bragging about escaping the broke loser and leveling up with Logan. Captions like, "New life, no baggage," were time-stamped during the twins' toddler years. Maxwell printed every one. But courtrooms aren't always about truth. They're about perception. And Jessica had the one thing family courts often value most: biology. Meanwhile, Rachel stayed quiet in the background. She didn't chase attention. She kept life stable for the girls, kept them away from the noise, kept David grounded. Then the court ordered the girls to be brought in for a private judicial interview. It would be up to a 7-year-old and her twin sister to describe the world they knew. Would they remember Jessica, or would they only remember love? The courtroom was packed. Reporters from local news stations filled the benches. Law students lined the back walls. The custody trial of Jessica Cole versus David Carter had captured Dallas's full attention. Jessica walked in first, flanked by her attorney, Marcus Blackwell. She held her head high, clutching tissues, dressed for sympathy. She glanced toward the defendant's table. David sat beside his attorney, Sarah Maxwell, with Rachel just behind them. None of them acknowledged her. Judge Patricia Hendricks, known for being fair but tough, entered the room. She had cleared the day's calendar for this case. Jessica's legal team went first. Blackwell opened with emotion. He told the story of a mother suffering from untreated postpartum psychosis. He spoke about Jessica's descent into darkness, her escape as an act of survival, not abandonment. He painted David as cold and negligent, accusing him of failing to recognize his wife's crisis and moving on too quickly. Then came the expert witnesses. A therapist claimed Jessica had shown classic symptoms of mental illness at the time she left. A support group leader said she'd been a regular attendee for years. A former friend from Atlanta testified that Jessica talked about her daughters often and cried after every session. Jessica took the stand next. Tears came instantly. She told the court she'd wanted to come back for years but didn't believe she was ready. She said she watched videos of twins on the internet and imagined Lily and Grace. She claimed that Rachel had brainwashed the girls and stolen her place in their lives. "I never stopped being their mother," she said through tears. "I want a chance to be there now, to fix what I broke." There was silence as she stepped down. Then Maxwell stood. What followed was not emotional. It was surgical. "Your Honor," she began, "this is not about healing. It's about control and entitlement." She showed the notarized letter, reading every line out loud. She presented Jessica's bank records, showing luxury purchases made within days of abandoning her family. She revealed travel documents that placed Jessica on vacation while David was taking the girls to pediatric checkups alone. Then came the social media posts. One by one, screenshots were displayed. Jessica referring to her children as baggage, mocking David's work boots, posting selfies with champagne and new jewelry, all dated during the years she claimed she was in recovery. Jessica's attorney objected. "Irrelevant, inflammatory." But the judge allowed it. Then Rachel took the stand. She didn't cry. She didn't attack. She simply answered questions. She told the court how she met David when the girls were still in diapers, how Lily called her mama before her second birthday, how she stayed up all night with Grace during a bad flu, how she drove them to school every day, helped with homework, tied ballet shoes, read bedtime stories. Her voice never wavered. "I never tried to replace anyone," she said. "I just never let them feel unloved." Maxwell's final witness was the court-appointed child psychologist who interviewed the twins privately. The psychologist testified that the children identified Rachel as their only maternal figure, that they did not recognize Jessica, and had shown visible distress even hearing her name. Lily said, and I quote, the psychologist read from her notes, "That lady scares me. She yells too much." Grace asked if they had to go live with someone they didn't know. Jessica's composure cracked. She covered her face, shoulders shaking. Her attorney whispered something, but it was too late. The courtroom had heard what mattered most. The judge recessed for deliberation. For 2 hours, no one moved far. Journalists whispered. Attorneys checked their phones. Jessica sat motionless, eyes on the floor. Then Judge Hendricks returned. Her decision would not only settle custody, it would define what motherhood meant in the eyes of Texas law. Judge Hendricks looked over the courtroom, then began reading the decision with deliberate clarity. This court acknowledges the seriousness of postpartum mental health conditions and does not discount the challenges they can create for new mothers. However, after reviewing all presented evidence, it is clear that the plaintiff, Miss Jessica Cole, did not act under temporary incapacity, but made deliberate and sustained choices. Jessica shifted uncomfortably at the plaintiff's table. The judge continued, referencing the notarized letter Jessica had signed days after she left. This document, voluntarily signed and legally notarized, clearly relinquishes parental rights. Coupled with over 7 years of no contact, no support, and no attempt at reconciliation, until the defendant reached financial success, it is this court's determination that legal abandonment occurred. Jessica's face froze. Her attorney leaned in, whispering rapidly, but she didn't respond. The defendant, David Carter, obtained a lawful divorce. The marriage between Mr. Carter and Miss Cole is legally dissolved. Furthermore, Rachel Carter's adoption of the children was legally valid and remains in full effect. Whispers rippled through the room. Jessica sat motionless. This court finds no legal basis to reverse custody or to award joint custody. The petition for reinstatement of parental rights is denied. The motion for spousal support and division of assets is denied. Jessica's expression collapsed, but the judge wasn't finished. Additionally, the court finds that Miss Cole's custody petition was filed under false pretenses, with the intent to mislead the court regarding her past actions and mental health history. Evidence presented proves she had the capacity to make independent financial and travel decisions during the time she claimed to be incapacitated. There was a pause. As such, Miss Cole is fined $25,000 for court misconduct in order to pay all legal fees incurred by the defendant, totaling $43,000. Jessica turned pale. Her savings, likely intended as leverage, would be gone. Her attorney asked to speak, but the judge shut it down. This court will not entertain further argument. The matter is closed. With a final strike of the gavel, it was over. Jessica sat in stunned silence as reporters scrambled to exit and file breaking news reports. Her 7-year plan to reclaim a family she'd discarded had disintegrated in under 20 minutes of court rulings. Rachel leaned down to whisper something to David, who gave a slight nod. Neither smiled. They weren't celebrating. They were absorbing the weight of what they'd been through. As courthouse staff began clearing the room, Jessica finally stood. She didn't look at David. She didn't look at the judge. She walked slowly to the exit, eyes fixed on the floor. Outside, cameras flashed. Jessica's face, once filtered and polished on social media, was now streaked with tears. Her carefully constructed image of redemption and regret had been replaced by headlines. Mother who abandoned twins loses custody battle, fined for fraud. She didn't answer questions. She didn't speak. Just walked past the crowd, alone, with nothing left but the suitcase she'd rolled up to the Carter's gate just weeks earlier. Inside the courthouse, David and Rachel were granted a private exit for the girls' safety. Lily and Grace, unaware of the legal war fought on their behalf, were waiting at home with Rachel's mother. When David returned, he knelt beside them and told them the truth in simple terms. Everything is okay. We're your forever family. Nothing will ever change that. Later that week, the family gathered with close friends and neighbors who had quietly supported them through the chaos. David didn't talk about court. He didn't mention Jessica. He talked about the girls' soccer season starting soon, about Rachel's new classroom, about building a treehouse in the backyard. Jessica tried, one last time, to file an appeal, but it was rejected within hours. The judge's ruling had been airtight. Her parental rights remained permanently terminated. 3 months later, her Atlanta apartment was listed for sublet. Her social media accounts vanished. Her name disappeared from court records, except in the judgment order. Jessica Cole, once determined to take back the life she left behind, had been shut out for good. And David Carter, the man she thought would never recover, had something she would never understand: peace. 3 months after the courtroom battle ended, Legacy Drive looked different. Not physically. The trees were still trimmed, the mailboxes still aligned. But something had shifted. The neighborhood, once frozen in tension during the custody hearings, now radiated relief. No more news vans. No more whispers over hedges. Just normalcy. David and Rachel Carter hosted a small gathering in their backyard. It wasn't a party, not officially. Just close friends, a few neighbors, and the people who stood by them when things were uncertain. There were no speeches, no fanfare, just food, laughter, and the quiet confidence of a family that had weathered a storm and come out stronger. That evening, David and Rachel renewed their vows in front of a modest group. The ceremony wasn't planned for public impact. It was for the girls, for closure, for healing. Lily and Grace stood at the center of it all, holding the rings and watching as their parents promised to keep choosing each other. Not out of obligation, but out of love. Proven, tested, and unshakable. Rachel didn't promise to be a perfect mother. She promised to keep showing up, to keep listening, to keep earning the trust the girls had freely given her. David didn't promise the world. He promised to protect their peace, to never let the chaos of the past define their future. After the ceremony, the girls hugged them both, whispering, "We're happy you're our forever family." That night, as the guests left and the backyard grew quiet, David stood alone for a moment, watching his daughters chase fireflies. Rachel joined him, linking her arm with his. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "I think I finally am." They didn't need to talk about Jessica. She was part of the past, a closed chapter. There were no more legal threats, no more letters, no more sudden appearances. Her final attempt to re-enter their lives had failed not because of court documents, but because her absence had left no space to return to. In the months following the trial, Jessica vanished from the public eye. Her appeal was denied. The fines drained her savings. She quietly left Atlanta, likely trying to start over somewhere far from her old name. But starting over doesn't erase what you walked away from. Jessica had once believed biology entitled her to forgiveness, that showing up, years too late, would undo abandonment. But family isn't just blood. It's presence, it's effort, it's sacrifice. And she had offered none of that. David didn't hate her. He had no desire to see her suffer. But he also knew that allowing her back into their lives would be a betrayal. Not of himself, but of the daughters who had learned to feel safe again. He never spoke about her to the girls unless they asked. And when they did, he answered honestly but gently. "She's the woman who gave birth to you," he once told Lily. "But she didn't stay, and that's not your fault. It never was." Lily nodded, then changed the subject. That was enough. Years from now, the girls might dig into the court records or ask harder questions. But when they did, the answers would be there. In documents, yes, but also in the way David and Rachel raised them, with transparency, consistency, and unconditional love. The story that had once begun with abandonment ended with choice. With two adults who chose to build a home from the ground up. With two children who grew up not knowing loss, but stability. And with a quiet understanding that forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it means closing the door and moving forward with the people who stayed.